Hello dear friends! The information we're about to present is truly shocking to any sensible person. We live in a time when scientists do not know about the inexorably growing climate crisis. Even more so, politicians do not know either. Now, all of humanity is on the brink of a large-scale climate catastrophe. And at the same time, contemporary science tells us only about anthropogenic climate change, but is silent about the actual cause of climate change. Many people doubt this, doubt climate change, but facts are stubborn things. A year ago, the number of cataclysms in the world did not exceed a few dozen per month. But this year, we're already registering an average of 200 natural disasters per week. According to our monitoring data, more than 6,000 climate disasters occurred during the first 10 months of 2022. These include floods, fires, hurricanes, tornadoes, mudslides and landslides, abnormal snowfalls and hail. Imagine, it's like 6,000 war zones where a climate, the only enemy of humanity, is waging its attack. And that's only what's reflected in open sources of information. In fact, there are many more natural disasters on the planet. And worst of all, these cataclysms have taken many lives that can never be returned. Their families and loved ones can never recover that loss. The monitoring report you will see is the result of work of thousands of volunteers around the world. All facts are cross-checked many times before we use them. All this information is taken solely from public sources so everyone can cross-check it and see for themselves the extent of the horror we have encountered. I want to emphasize that thousands of people are working on collecting and analyzing data. It is difficult for one person to collect and analyze so much information. In our research activities, we have encountered the fact that a lot of data that is available in open sources is being deleted. Information about climatic cataclysms, their power and frequency is simply disappearing. They try to give us the appearance of a more or less favorable climate situation. At the same time, the statistics are more horrifying than ever before in the history of modern civilization. That is especially evident this year. But to soften the situation, they try to tell us that nothing horrible is happening and our climatic condition is within the normal limits. In the media, the data is falsified and downplayed. Even for one institution, collecting statistics on all climatic cataclysms and anomalies is difficult. But we are volunteers, and there are a lot of us around the world. To get a reliable picture of what is happening, we work with primary sources, research groups that record the data, and directly with eyewitnesses of climatic cataclysms. We're going to show you a climate monitoring video. I ask you to watch this video very carefully. It shows the actual progression of climate change in the world.
USA, Taiwan, Kazakhstan.
It's a true nightmare that's happened for the first time in my whole life.
Bulgaria.
It was as if a bomb had fallen.
Italy.
Who could have known that the water would rush in so fast? We lost everything.
Pakistan. Spain. China. Germany. Storms and hurricanes. Category 4 Hurricane Ian was the deadliest hurricane to hit Florida residents in the United States. Some cities were 90% destroyed by the storm surge, furious winds, and flooding. More than 1.5 million people had to leave their homes. According to preliminary estimates, the damage will exceed $100 billion. Passing Puerto Rico, Hurricane Fiona left several million people without electricity and drinking water. And this was at a time when it was unbearably hot and humid on the island. Fiona is the first Category 4 hurricane in history to move this far north. It reached eastern Canada, maintaining the strength of a Category 2 hurricane, and left an unprecedented path of destruction in the country. In recent years, tropical storms have begun to move further north and south from the equator. The world's megacities such as New York, Boston, Beijing, and Tokyo could soon be under their attack. Typhoon Noru was predicted to hit the Philippines as the equivalent of a Category 1 hurricane, but in just 6 hours there was an explosive intensification to a Category 5 super typhoon, with wind gusts reaching 196 miles per hour. People did not have time to prepare for the impact of the natural disaster of such force. More than 900,000 people were affected, while the damage to agriculture exceeded 52 million. On the island of Corsica, France, the wind reached a speed of 224 kilometers per hour. During the storm, the fierce winds tore down power lines and trees were falling down like matchsticks. In Europe alone, the average annual number of storms has increased by almost 16.5 times since 2000. In the United States, the number of convective storms, the damage of which exceeds $1 billion, is growing unprecedentedly. Between 2000 and 2010, there were 34 of them, and in the next 11 years, there were already 95. In the Southern Hemisphere, storm intensification over recent decades has already reached levels projected to occur in the year 2080. Abnormal precipitation and flooding. The amount of abnormal rainfall is increasing all over the world. During 9.5 months of 2022, more than 36,000 daily precipitation records were registered on the planet. The province of Ancona, Italy, was hit by half a year worth of rain overnight. Never before in their lives have the residents seen such a rapid rise of water, almost 1 meter in 10 minutes. Australia has been hit by 3 waves of historic floods in 2022. Brisbane was hit by a rain bomb when more than a month's worth of rain fell daily for 3 consecutive days. Given such frequency and intensity of flooding, it makes no sense to rebuild some cities. On the eastern coast of South Africa, almost a year's worth of rain fell within 24 hours, resulting in one of the deadliest floods of the 21st century in the country. Seoul, South Korea, was hit by record downpours in August 2022. Water rushed rapidly into all the underground and semi-basement rooms. Subways, crosswalks, parking lots, and even apartments turned into death traps. People died from flooding right in their homes. In Colombia, the number of floods increased by 87% in just 1 year. Back in 2020, there were 428 of them, and in the next year, already 802. Meanwhile, in several municipalities in the department of Sucre, the flooding has been lasting for more than a year. Just 60 years ago, there were 8 major floods per year in the world, and by 2021, this number has increased by 27 times. Besides, they began to occur simultaneously, covering several countries at once. In the summer of 2022 alone, floods occurred in at least 120 countries on all continents. The monsoon season of 2022 turned into the biggest climate disaster in modern history of Pakistan. 1/3 of the country's provinces went underwater. More than 1,600 people have been killed and 33 million people have been affected by the disaster. Half of them are children. Over 2 million houses have been destroyed. Elderly people, pregnant women, and children are forced to live outdoors in inhumane conditions. There is a lack of food, drinking water, and medical care. Contaminated water has become a source of infections. People are left without jobs, shelter, and means of livelihood. After almost 2 months, the water is still not gone. The nightmare for people continues to this day and will only get worse. Extreme heat and droughts. During the 9 months of 2022, there have been over 100,000 highest temperature records across the globe. In China, for the first time in world history, a heat wave reached 113 degrees Fahrenheit and lasted 79 days in a row. More than 900 million people were affected by the extreme temperatures. Bomb shelters were opened to people as a relief from the unbearable heat. To save their crops, farmers worked at night as the soil heated up to 60 degrees Celsius during the day. The summer, Europe experienced its hottest summer on record. In the UK, temperatures in July exceeded 40 degrees Celsius for the first time in history. In France, a prolonged heat wave caused the water in rivers to get so hot that it became unsuitable for cooling nuclear reactors in nuclear power plants. A similar thing happened in the Persian Gulf. Heat kills people. In the European Union, the deaths of 53,000 people in July are directly attributed to the unprecedented heat wave. Severe droughts have hit the major economies of the Northern Hemisphere this year, with damages of $13.2 billion in the first half of 2022 alone. In China, the USA, India, Australia, Europe, and other regions, rivers and reservoirs have sharply shallowed and navigation has come to a virtual standstill. This has also exacerbated the energy crisis and has become another factor in the soaring of electricity prices. The drought has caused irreparable damage to agriculture, leading to an unprecedented rise in food prices. In the USA, the price of livestock feed increased by 90%. The water crisis has reached a record scale. Access to safe drinking water is under threat. No country, even an economically developed one, is immune to this problem. This year, over 2 billion people on our planet are already facing water shortages. Wildfires. In 2022, Alaska, USA, is experiencing the largest wildfire season in its history. 50 years ago, there were no such things as megafires. They cover huge areas and require enormous resources to keep them down. As of early October 2022, there have already been 16 megafires in the USA alone, and many more are approaching that scale. In South Korea, a megafire approached a nuclear power plant in March 2022. 18,000 people and dozens of helicopters were mobilized to extinguish it. In Russia, there has been a sharp increase in the area of wildfires in the last 5 years. There has even been an increase in fires that burn under the snow in winter. In 2022, natural fires in Europe exceeded 770,000 hectares for the first time since satellite measurements became available. This is more than the size of the Canary Islands and 3 times more than the average burn-up in a year. And in some countries, the increase in wildfires has been really shocking. In the Czech Republic, an average of 9 hectares of land is burnt annually. However, by the end of September this year, the fire had already destroyed almost 1,500 hectares. This is 158 times more than usual. At the beginning of September this year in Brazil, there were a record number of fires in the country on 3 consecutive days, more than 3,000 per day. Wildfires are not seasonal anymore. Now they don't stop even in winter, and hurricane winds spread the fire at breakneck speed. In the Algerian province of El Taref, winds of over 55 miles per hour caused the flames to spread in a matter of minutes, leaving no chance for people to escape. Fires are occurring in places where they have almost never been before. Central Europe, the rainforests of South America, and even the Arctic are burning. Today, single cataclysms already occur very rarely. There goes an entire cascade of disasters, one involving the other. And this interconnection intensifies the devastation and takes more and more human lives. Even economically developed countries cannot restore their climatically ravaged territories for years. More and more regions are becoming uninhabitable. What was predicted for the year 2100 is already happening right before our eyes today. In 2022, there has been an unprecedented leap in the power and the amount of natural disasters, and judging by the progression, they will continue to increase at record speed. In order for humankind to survive, urgent, extraordinary action is needed. Meanwhile, we have very little time left.
This video shows a tiny fraction of the climate disasters that have occurred this year. The year 2022 was watershed. Everyone has seen how abnormal and unpredictable the cataclysms have become. All hopes that the climate will change gradually have collapsed. The progression of disasters is increasing. Just think, over the past 9 months, 100,000 records of heat waves and 36,000 records of precipitation have been broken. That threats to cause a food crisis of planetary proportions. In the fall of 2022, almost the entire northern hemisphere received another dose of heat instead of long-awaited coolness. in northern Canada, where the average September temperature is about 8 Celsius degrees, temperatures over 30 Celsius degrees were recorded for several days. And in icy Greenland, the temperature was more than 20 degrees above normal. Floods have become so powerful that even economically stable countries cannot withstand their onslaught. While last year floods of the century were recorded, this year floods of the millennium are occurring everywhere. These are floods that occur with a probability of once in 1,000 years. Such a climate catastrophe hit northeastern Brazil in spring of 2022. And in the summer, as many as 5 of these millennium floods occurred in less than 1 month in the United States. Some 70 million people were affected. That's a huge number. It's not just a statistic, it's 70 million people who have already been affected. The scale of natural disasters is constantly increasing. Emergency services in many countries already say there are not enough people and equipment to deal with the consequences of climate disasters. In Australia, for example, people have given up hope for help. Over the past year, the country has been overwhelmed by historic waves of floods. People are simply abandoned amidst a temporary climate disaster and no help can reach them. And it's only going to get worse. There is less and less hope for international aid because countries are simultaneously faced with cataclysms and have to try to solve their own problems first. In just a few years, when the cataclysms take full force, nobody will come to help because trouble will be everywhere. Today, the consequences of disasters already affect everyone. The world is very interconnected. Flooded or scorched fields in one part of the planet mean a massive increase in food prices or famine in another. The media shows us the disaster itself, but they don't show what happens to people afterward. A cataclysm can last for hours or even minutes, but people are left to cope with aftermath for years. Do you think this is the case only in developing countries? It's been a year since the deadly flooding in Europe in July 2021, and many of those affected are still unable to return to their homes. In technologically advanced Japan, hundreds of people still live in temporary housing 3 years after Typhoon Hagibis. In the United States, after the terrible tornado that hit Kentucky in December 2021, people are still not back in their homes. And there are countless examples of this. We're all vulnerable to the elements. Millions of people lose their homes and everything they own. Everything we have accumulated throughout our lives vanishes in an instant, irrevocably. Dry clothes, a piece of bread, or a sip of water are what becomes most precious. And if you are lucky enough to survive, the most you can count on is a place in a refugee camp. Yes, losing your possessions is not the worst of evils. Many survivors lose family and friends. We can restore everything except lost human life. Cataclysms are escalating and we have no way of coping with them. Existing programs to combat climate change do not work. Over the past 20 years, the situation on the planet has worsened catastrophically and climate disasters continue to increase. And today, when we need to study the real causes of climate change, we as humanity do nothing to understand the cause of growing cataclysms. We waste time and trillions of dollars on an only false theory of anthropogenic climate change and do nothing. It's simply a suicide. We watch our world crumble. We hope that we need to be patient and wait it out, and everything will return to normal. It won't. Our world will never be the same again. If we continue to do nothing, tomorrow the elements will destroy our life, and it will be too late to do anything about it. Now, the search for salvation from a planetary climate catastrophe must become the most critical task for mankind, and all of the society's resources must be devoted to it.